sharing the new thing.
Yeah.
Uh, okay,
And
let me.
and and in the class, in the presentation class, when you are supposed to present, we want you to be ready with the presentations as per this format. This is otherwise is showing a PDF file, but he has uploaded the InDesign file for this on the group right now.
I will share that.
Okay,
It's
he
still
will
not
share
uploaded,
that.
but I.
You
It's a
can
WeTransfer
download that
link. Yeah.
InDesign file and replace these images and the text with your project.
So listen carefully. Okay. So we have 4 to 5 parts of the presentation. Okay. So it starts with the cover page where you are showing the. So these are just reference thing. Okay. So you will replace with your images of your project, and they should be good images. Ideally high res images with nice shots, but try to get the best images whatever are possible. Okay, so the so it's a A3 size template, and as you see, there are 2 parts of it. The right side is where the data is there, and the left side where the text is there. Okay, and so we start with the name of the building. I mean the project name, location, architect, area, year, and a brief information about the project. So this is a more of just a brief introduction to the. Now we have 4 parts to this for every project. So first part is drawing. If you see on the top there is written, there is a drawing. So under drawings we have all the plans. So this is A is plan, and then this is a housing project. So housing project, we are looking at what is the base module. Okay, so you will get the module like the smallest component. Maybe it's a one apartment or one room or whatever it is. So there is a overall plan, and then there is a module, and then there are sections and elevations. Okay, so that comprise the drawing section of it. And these drawings you should draw. I mean, you don't need to draw everything. Let's say section, elevation. You have to draw which is the most important thing. So that we understand the project. Okay, we can talk about it later, but at the moment, I see that if it's, I mean, I don't know the old projects where you have the drawing, you don't have the drawing. So whatever is available, you need to get that thing. Yeah, but you need to create a drawing of that. Okay, a AutoCAD drawing, and then which then you can insert in the InDesign file. So the drawing section has this: the main plan, then the module plan, then the sections and elevations. Then second is diagrams. So under diagram, we have a programmatic diagram. Okay. So how the program is distributed. Maybe it's a mixed use, maybe it's a housing, but there is a public thing, or there are HIGs, MIG, different types. So you need to create a programmatic diagram of this. Okay. And that can be through a module, can be through the entire plan, or can be through a section, whatever is relevant. This is just a reference which we are showing you. Based on your project, you need to choose how do you want to show that. But obviously, we here we are not giving you axo, because axo is difficult to construct. So that's why you can show in two-dimensional things. Okay, so program is the first. Then second is the idea of publicness. This you will find in most of the building. So the idea of public and private, how do you show that? So here it is shown in the different shades of gray. So you can use that. So try avoid using color. Black and white drawings are preferred unless there is something specific you want to show. Then the third diagram is of the movement. Okay, so again it's the same thing. So this all information is important for you to analyze the building holistically. Okay, so movement within a floor, or movement within an entire building section, or through a cluster, all that you need to draw, maybe speculate if you don't have correct drawings for this. but that's where you will understand the building in much more detail. But now third part. So we have first part drawing, second part diagram, third part is system.
But 1 second, Advait, can I just say something?
हाँ बोलो.
Acha, in diagrams, if you feel the need to add other diagrams, that is fine. I think certain buildings may require some other diagrams which are important for its analysis. And
Yeah.
so these are 3 templates that we have given you,
Right.
and 3 diagrams that are generally necessary or important in a building, but there can be other diagrams also, which are
Right.
very important,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
which you
I mean,
find have
I
more resonance in the project, and you should use those.
so there is one maybe I can add and I give you, or you can add it, is the relationship diagram. You can just add that. So maybe at
Yeah.
different level you will find these relationship, public private, maybe solid void, or depending on whatever it is. So that one page you can add as relationship diagrams. Okay. Uh, After the diagrams, then we look at the system. So system one is structural system. Again, I mean, if you have the information, depending on the project, some are very, if you see the structure is uh, your frame structure, or then load bearing or composite, but you need to create a correct diagram for that. Okay. uh, then the MEP or the services. This is for the basic understanding. I mean, in a maybe housing project, I mean, the recent housing project, you will find this to a great extent. The idea of maybe light ventilation, maybe the green buildings of the screen or something. So it totally depends on project to project. So if there is anything specific apart from the electrical or plumbing, you should show that. Now, the last part, or second last, is the tectonics. So this is very important. That how how do you arrive at the form of the building, or the overall formal, the language of the building, I would say. So, in a housing project, you have components or modules. You start arranging the modules in certain way. I mean, maybe simple extrusion, or then there are more transformers to that, and then you will get the shape or the form. So this is just to show you that you have modules and you have aggregation. So again, you can modify this based on the idea of the building, but that is open for interpretation. And in the last part, we talk about the material system. So material system is shown through these kind of enlarged sections, where we talk about the external appearances, or if there are any important materials which are used in the building. So so these graphic, what we have shared in the presentation, uh, I mean, these qualities are important in a sense that you want to show material system, you should use section or max, or then maybe axo, exploded axo. Now we have looked at section because it's simple to draw, but it should be in detail. So, and the last one is a synthesis drawing. Synthesis drawing is a drawing which your interpretation of the project. So that's where it's a take of your building. So for example, I think by end of the seminar you are supposed to submit a paper, so in which so this is so this can be seen as a extension to that. That what do you understand from the building, and yeah. So this is for the housing project. Now it's same with the other projects, but there's a small difference. Let me show you that. One sec. One second. This is not seen, right? You're not
No,
seeing.
not yet.
One sec. Give me 2 minutes. Let me just open it again. Okay. Can you see this?
Yeah, we can see.
I'm not able to do full screen here. I don't know why. Okay, I may have opened it. Anyway, so I
Okay.
will just scroll it down here.
Hmm.
So it's the same start point. That only thing is this is applicable for rest of the project other than housing. So institutional, cultural, trade and commerce, and civic administration. So it starts with again an overview of the project with images and text, followed by drawings in which you have the plans. Uh, Now here we don't have the modules. Okay, what we have is directly we jump into section and elevation. Okay, then we come to diagrams, in which again it's a programmatic diagram which can be color coded, followed by here we have added a deep structure diagram, which is a again organization diagram. So in housing project, maybe it's difficult to find a deep structure. So, but in the rest of the building, you will definitely have some organizational structure. Now, whether that is followed to its core and whether you can distill it to a single diagram, that I don't know. But we have kept one slide for that. So if you find, you can add to that, or you can
Can't hear
replace it.
you.
Hello, hello. Can
Yeah.
can can others hear me or no?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yes.
Acha. Okay. So, so I think there is a
It's
problem.
my connection.
Yes. Okay, so what I was saying is that you have an option of deep structure or then replace it with something else, like Nimish had mentioned, that which is relevant to the project. After that, again, there is a publicness. So the rest of the things remain same. Okay, movement, structure, which is part of the system. Okay, services, tectonics. Now tectonics has, in this case, we have how different this is, that there is a geometry and there is a order, then there is composition. So this is the base thing. Like you have some basic shapes. You start.
Advait,
Huh.
I'm still on deep structure. Is everybody else seeing what Advait is talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see.
My connection is
Your connection is a
bad.
bit slow. Okay, so
It's little bit cracking.
okay, can you hear me now? Hello. Hello.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
hear
Yeah.
you. Okay, I am on tectonics formal system. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Okay.
That's correct. Correct.
Okay, fine. Go
So,
ahead.
so formal system is that you are looking at the building and you are understanding the how the architects has arrived at the form of the building. I mean, we talked about the program, we talked about the plan, but the formal manifestation is important, and that is the formal tectonics, the basic geometry, the underlying geometry, the hidden order or the apparent order. That is what you need to display here. Okay, and that can be simple through 2D diagrams or sketch. I think diagram, not sketches. It has to be a proper diagram. Like the
Diagram.
graph, yeah, the graphic quality should be simple line drawing, but there can be a grid shown or so. You, I think you will understand this. If not, then we'll talk about it project to project. Okay. Then the last one is the material system, which is the same thing, which I spoke in the last part. Is the through sections you are showing the tectonic quality of the building. Okay, and then the synthesis drawing is the same thing, that your take on the building. So I think that's what we have. If you have any questions, just quickly ask.
You can stop sharing, Abhay.
I'm so.
Any questions, or should we start with the other thing?
Or maybe I think they will have questions
Can
once they start working on the building.
Okay. Should I
But
start the rest of the presentation?
yeah.
I think you start.
Yeah. Can you see?
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Okay. So this is a, so last time we spoke about the sort of genealogy of modern architecture in India, and we reached up to the point of independence or something like that. Today, and we spoke about this idea of modernity, which is different than the idea of modernism and modern. And I am just reiterating this slide because that is actually the crux of what we are talking about throughout the whole semester, that it is modernity which is very important. And modernity is this idea of change from a deep rooted traditional way of looking at things. It is rooted in this in science and technology to some extent, but it is also rooted in a deep sense of humanity, of humanism, where the so even this modernity is not a singular idea. The sense of modernity changes, and uh, what it was maybe in the 60s and the 70s is now changing to some extent with the idea of sustainability, with the idea with new ideas of inclusion, which were not there before. So there was a way of looking at modernity in the at the time of independence or before that, and now it is still modern. It is still modern, but this sense of modernity keeps fluctuating. And in India, I mean, we left it at this point where Marg was the Marg was sort of started by a few people uh, in Bombay, and the criteria was a simple one of beauty, a term which was defined at the cover, the formal materials of a work of art as well as the subject matter and the function it fulfills in society. So the idea was talking about art and architecture in the country at that time. And if you see the contributing editors, there are certain names which will come later, and that's why I'm showing this also. So, and this was the world as it is today. Uh, all the countries that we have. Um,
I think someone else's mic is on. Can you
yeah,
shut it?
there is background noise. Okay, is it clear now?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So this is the world. I mean, and but we come to this problem. Again, I am repeating the sentence from last time what Paul Ricoeur said, that how do we, I mean, we know from what from history that okay, modernity in some sense emerged through the West, which became richer due to through the means of colonialism and imperialism, and this sense of this global South, which uh, which was very different than the North. The North was rich, was modern, who had more resources, whereas the South was the part of the world which was underdeveloped, and but it was forced into modernity in some sense. There was this awakening in the global South also through independence, through the revolutions that happened everywhere, through the overthrow of these imperial powers, that they also need to become modern. They need to catch up to the modern world to survive and to progress in some sense. So uh, so 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 it was a dilemma in all these countries, and we spoke about what happened in India at that time, and that how do you do that. And there are always these multiple forces, no, this call back to the past. Because of the imperial powers, you are subjugated to this white man's European ideology, and the native population in all these countries felt that, okay, what is wrong with their own civilization? So there is this call back to the past. There is a call forward to the future, and that future was achievable only through this modernity, only through westernization and globalization in some sense. So there were in all the countries that we will look at in the next two classes actually. We're going to go slower than what is given in the brief. In the next we will look at today. We will look at Japan and Mexico, and a little bit, very briefly at Sri Lanka. Also, I'll try to finish it in time. Uh, how the conflicting impulses in these countries led to their own kinds of modernisms. And in all these countries, there's a similar trend. What happens is that there is first this imposition of this Western modernization, which starts with imitation of historical styles. Then there is this impulse to be very modern, which means there's an impulse to imitate the Western modernism. And then there is a call back to the past where they rediscover their own social and cultural traditions. And then there is a mix of those things. So there is something that is modern, but natural, natural and relevant, or belonging to their culture also. So in some sense, it's kind of this very, again, sense of critical regionalism or regionalism, and within that there are different nuances in all these countries. So we'll just this is what I mean. When people control their destiny, and as you reach the modern world, uh, when you revolt from the imperial powers and you throw them out, but you realize that the problems of modernism are also there. With industrialization, there is a problem. With coming into the new world, there are problems, and societies and countries, different countries, dealt with them at their own state, um, in their own way, actually, with all of these issues. So this is Octavio Paz. Octavio Paz was a Mexican poet, is a Mexican poet, a Nobel laureate, and he was also the ambassador to India for a few years in the 50s and the 60s. And he wrote this fantastic book on the idea of India, actually. And he's also a very good historian of Mexico, and he connects the two civilizations in a very beautiful way, and talks about the idea of both of these civilizations having very deep roots, but also being very new. In the sense that India has very strong historical roots. The cultural traditions go way past. But with the birth of a new India at independence, this kind of combination of India into a single political entity was never there. So it was sort of a new birth. And similarly, Mexico also went through something like this, actually. But yeah, I'll talk about Mexico later. Right now, I use that because that is something which is relevant to all these countries. And Japan also, the same thing happened. In Japan, this is an image of the Katsura Imperial Villa, which is a 17th century imperial palace in Kyoto, where the old capital was actually in Kyoto, not in Tokyo, actually. And you see the sense of space making, the sense of craft, and this is actually a photograph by Ishimoto Yasuhiro, who was an American photographer who came back to Japan in the 50s and started taking these beautiful pictures of this Katsura Imperial Villa. This is just something that people start seeing their own history through a different lens. Nobody looked at the Katsura, the 17th century monument, as a very modern building. But when you see this kind of an image, you can see references to modern art, modernities, uh, and ideas that are very different than the ideas that were rooted in the building of the palace. Actually, in Japan, one second. There's a slide that's missing. Actually, okay. Wow. Okay. So anyway, so what happens is in Japan, the political regime goes through a lot of upheavals actually. By the late 1880s, the new Meiji Empire comes back. Japan is a very autocratic country. The emperor is sort of the most important person in the country. And before 1880s, there was this um, uh, uh, there was the Edo regime, the shogunate, which was called, which was like the Peshwas of India. They were not the kings, but the shogun is a sort of the ruler of the country, and the shogunates, they opened up Japan. Japan was a very closed society till then. So this image of when the Kyoto when this imperial villa was built, nobody knew Japan. Most people had not entered Japan. It was very close. Like China, Japan was also a closed society. But during just before this, there was a lot of opening up, which was forced onto Japan. The colonial empires, Great Britain and France and Portugal, they all forced parts of Japan to open up and force them to enter into trade relations with them, which were not very conducive to Japan, but were better off for the Western countries actually. And this they did through threat of war and other stuff actually. So in the late at the beginning of the 19th century, the Meiji Empire comes into being, and the Meiji Empire is this new idea of the emperor becoming again coming back into the public realm, and the country starts following the emperor. And in the Japan, I mean in Japan, in fact, if you know a little bit about it, eras are called by the name of the emperor. So every time the emperor changes, or he dies, or he abdicates the throne, and a new emperor comes back, the era changes. So their calendar is much more closely related to the rule of the emperor. And this is the Meiji Empire, which from the 1880s till the 1920s started controlling Japan more and started ushering Japan into this into this modern world. But even at that time, it was the idea of the Meiji Empire to bring them into modernity. So there was technological improvement. There were railway stations, there were trains, there were lights, larger department stores, modern transportation. All of that started happening, but it was still a very imitative historicist style which comes from the West. But and that lasted for about 20-30 years. I don't have images of buildings, historicist buildings of Japan as of now. But after that, what happened? There was this secession. You remember the secessionist movement, the monument I showed last time? The same thing happens in Japan in the 1920s. Around the 1920s, a new movement starts, which is called the Bunriha. And through that movement, there are some architects who start revolting against the traditionalist styles and start building in this modern style. So this is Yamaguchi, who started this Ishimoto Architectural and Engineering Incorporated. That's a company in Tokyo, and this is one of the first really modern buildings in Tokyo, which was highly influenced. So Yamaguchi works with Gropius, Hans Poelzig, and he understands their works actually, comes back to Japan and starts building in this style. So this is one of the first modern buildings. And although he works with the ideas of the Bauhaus, I mean, if you know enough about Western European modernism, there is still a larger influence of Eric Mendelssohn, more in comparison to Gropius and Hans Poelzig actually, because the curved nature of the softer edges, the plasticity in the building. There's a sense of this um, architecture which comes, which Mendelssohn was sort of involved in, and that was not very rooted in the didactic nature of modern architecture, but much more softer in that sense, much more rooted in the space, in the place. This is the Asahi building by Yamamoto, and around this time, um, uh, in 1923, if you remember or if you know, the large earthquake happened. The Great Kanto earthquake happened, where almost all of Kyoto, Tokyo was demolished, except for one of the important buildings which survived was Frank Lloyd Wright's Imperial Hotel. I'm sure everybody's learned about the Imperial Hotel actually at that time. So that was a building survived. And after this Kanto earthquake, there were a lot of changes in Japanese society, and the subway and the metro started. And this was a portrait, which was of the first subway of in the East, which means the whole of East, actually, all of East Asia, Southeast Asia. The first subway started in Tokyo, and this is a very famous portrait of that actually. Now, around this time, Bruno Taut, Frank Lloyd Wright, they were constantly talking about this Japaneseness, which was again going back to a traditional Japanese way of architecture. And there were lots of these buildings which were being built, which were large modernist monuments. This is a competition on the Imperial Household Museum competition, one of the first museums to be built in Japan. This is Kita Kamakura. This is in 1934. One of the most intelligent buildings built around this time. The great thing about this building is actually, this was built around the same time that Richard Neutra built the Lowell House in California. And although it looks like a concrete building, it's actually not a concrete building. It has a steel internal structure, wooden. It is timber clad and then plastered to make it look like a concrete building. So although maybe the technology was there or not there, I'm not sure of that. But this sense of modernity prevails, and this sense of what kind of architecture you want, what you want architecture to look like, is already there in the minds of these architects around that time. And this is the Japanese pavilion in 1937. Again, this is a steel building with concrete slabs, and there's jalis. There's other kind of tropical sense of architecture. The garden in which it is set. This is built in Paris, and it's a very different kind of architecture compared to the architecture that is generally done in that is generally seen in France, and sort of looks back at Japan also, but looks at modernity in Japan also. Again, these industrial monuments were coming all over Japan. The same thing that will happen maybe 20 years later or 15, 20 years later in India, where these industrial buildings start becoming the face of the nation actually. This is later actually. This is the World Peace Memorial Cathedral in Togo, again in Tokyo by Togo Murano, and this is one of the most important monuments. Actually, just before this, I want to talk a little bit about this building. Actually, this is by Kunio Maekawa. And this is called the Tokyo Bunka Kaikan. These are funny pronunciations. I'm probably pronouncing them incorrectly. And it is one of the most important historical monuments, because this guy, the Maekawa, he was the teacher of all the famous architects that you see right now. Kenzo Tange, Arata Isozaki, Fumihiko Maki. And he was this hardcore modernist. And he talked about this again. He was obviously influenced by Le Corbusier. This is a building by Le Corbusier right next to the Tokyo Metropolitan Festival Hall. And he talked about this modernism, this kind of modern architecture as bringing Japan back into the modern age. When at this time the debates start happening in Japan, and Kenzo Tange is the first one to oppose his teacher Maekawa, saying that how does this talk about Japan? How does this talk about a Japanese national identity? So questions of nation and identity are always predominant in the minds of architects who are performing at that time. And this was a time, 40s, 50s, 60s, where all the nations that we talk about are going through this. They're going through this kind of sense of where they stand, what is architecture, what does it represent, and how do we create a national identity for ourselves. Uh, this is obviously Le Corbusier. Next to that Bunko, that building, and if you look at this, this is so similar to the Sanskar Kendra in that Corbusier did 5 years back in Ahmedabad. So Corbusier again, I mean, if you see that he's going from here to there, taking his ideas to India, then back to Japan, and influencing ideas there also. So there's this sense of modernism, that this modern architecture, that these few architects, Gropius, Frank Lloyd Wright, Le Corbusier, they influence so many people around that time in the world, that this became so pervasive and became the language of all these countries which started trying to become modern actually. And you see that what Maekawa does, even in India, B.V. Doshi does the same thing. He's so influenced by Corbusier that his first few buildings after Corbusier look exactly like like Corbusian buildings. They are brutal concrete buildings. They are these plastic shapes, and then only later Doshi changes. Maekawa does not change. He remains true to the modernist principles till the end of his life, but uh, but his disciples, the next generation which comes after Maekawa, is very strong, and they talk about, they are the metabolists actually. They come uh, through what the metabolists do is, instead of this machine aesthetic, machine functionalism, they take it, and this obviously comes from a deeper understanding or a deeper influence of Japanese-ness actually, where they talk of biological architecture or biological metaphors for building. And this is reflected again in other movements across the world, in Team 10 or Archigram also, which were happening at the same time. But the metabolists were so strongly influenced by this kind of biological metaphors that all their buildings were based on these ideas, and they regard, this is their famous manifesto, that they regard human society as a vital process, a continuous development from atom to nebula. The reason why we use such a biological word, the metabolism, is that we believe design and technology should be a denotation of human vitality. They thought that design and technology represents the humanity of people. Again, this comes from a deeper sort of this wabi-sabi idea of architecture that was prevalent in Japan, which is this idea of imperfection and nature take its own course. So this kind of understanding of biological processes or metamorphosis of things into something else is very important in Japanese culture, and this is something which influences this new Japanese wave of metabolism. And these are just some examples of Kisho Kurokawa, Arata Isozaki, Kiyoneri, this Kikutake, who designed these buildings. This is the new pavilion. This is in 1970, the Toshiba pavilion, which is made of these DNA cells actually. They represented the cellular structure of human beings, and this was just after the understanding by Francis Crick and Crick and Watson of the DNA. The DNA was sort of discovered just before this exhibition, and they took the idea of the DNA and the helical structure of the DNA and used that in this expo actually. This is one of the most famous metabolist building in the world, the Nakagakin Capsule Tower by Kisho Kurokawa. And this is sort of a poster for his work. And obviously, after this, you get this new breed of architects in Japan. And obviously, we don't go into that right now. But you have this new breed of Japanese architect who moved away from metabolism into a very different kind of modernism. You have Sana, you have So Fujimoto, you have Tadao Ando who comes in between. And that sense of modernism is prevalent even today in the architecture in Japan. Um, let and now just we look at a little bit on the southern in the American continent, and you have Mexico there actually. And the history of Mexico is also very interesting. I'm jumping fast because today we don't have much time. I think we are going to overshoot the lecture. I'll quickly go through this. Um, that this is in the 1920s. Mexico became independent much earlier. Mexico became independent already in the 1820s from Portuguese and Spanish rule, but it was always highly influenced by Spain, and it went through a series of upheavals again from the 1820s to the 1920s. But it's only in the 1920s that this movement really starts beginning, and but the echoes are there before also. And these are the three things that are very important for modernity in Mexico, that architecture is dependent on other arts, its capacity to convey aspects of social history and cultural character on wall surfaces, and the uniqueness that is uh, uh, endowed by its connections to indigenous architecture. And this is true of Japan, of India, of whatever, of wherever we see that there is a connection to the culture, but there is a connection to the future also. This is Porfirio Diaz, the ruler of Mexico for almost 40 years, from the 1877, I think, or 1880 to 1911, when he was um, assassinated. And during his time, it was similar to the Meiji Empire in Japan, that there was this there was this ushering into modernity, but it was still very historicist. And what they are saying, that but at this time there is an awareness that you need to reject the elements of European and American system, and go move away from them. And that's there's this idea of transculturalization, culturation, which is a critical and selective process through which Latin American cultural producers take certain elements or structures from an admired or colonizing culture and substitute them for their own. So you understand, this is like mixing of different cultures, and you figure out what you want from your place of inspiration, or from where things are coming to you, substituting that with what is indigenous to you, and then creating a new sense of architecture. And the most important thing in Mexico was this idea of murals, wall art. And obviously this has a deeper history. This is a Mayan uh, painting from the 8th century, and these kind of wall paintings were abundantly available in the prehistoric art of the Mayas and the Aztecs and the Incas, and a lot of it is lost to history in some sense. But there is this awareness of that, and that becomes extremely important in this understanding of Mexico. So this muralism in Mexico, and in some sense, I didn't talk about it, but the manga art of Japan was also as critical in the development of the arts actually. And this muralism is a very popular form of art, similar in some sense to, again, Raja Ravi Verma in India. How you take certain ideas and bring them out to the people, and how you make them popular through this kind of murals, which buildings are embellished with actually. This is Juan O'Gorman, one of the most important architects and painters and artists working in Mexico, and he changed drastically. I'll show you a little bit of that. How he went from a very functionalist architect to a painter, and he left architecture behind actually. He stopped practicing as an architect by the time he does this mural. So before that, he didn't. And there are these three important muralists in Mexico. Diego Rivera. This is history of Mexico. This whole big painting which he did in the National Palace in Mexico City. And this is again Diego Rivera. This is Clemente Orozco, and there is one more, David Alfaro Siqueiros. I don't have a mural by him, but these were three extremely important muralists in working in Mexico and who changed the nature of public art in the country. This is another guy who's also important, and this sense of very modern cities starts coming out in their work, and obviously this leads to one of the most important Mexican painters, Frida Kahlo, who is just immediately after this. She was actually the wife of Diego Rivera, and they both lived together. And Juan O'Gorman, whose mural I showed you, he built a house for them. So I mean, the world is, I mean, that world is so small and interconnected. I'll just talk about two quick buildings. This is the Mexican Pavilion in 1920, which was for an exhibition in Spain in 1929. So already 3 years ago, the idea of the pavilion is announced, and Portugal invites.
we can't see the pavilion. At least I can't see.
No. There's a slide. There's just writing right now. Can you see the slide?
I am seeing Frida Kahlo's painting. That's
Okay.
Yeah, same.
I am on. Can you guys see the Mexican pavilion? Can you guys see this? J.M. Amabilis. There's a inverted pyramid writing.
No.
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 Okay.
Nimbus, also we
My
have a
connection is
class
on.
right now.
Huh?
We have a class right now. It's already started.
We just started the meeting right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
the
should we
next
stop?
lecture started.
I can stop and we can do this next time. I'll finish this next time.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Chandra, can you call me later? One of you, can you talk? I need to speak to someone.
Yeah, we'll give you a call.
Yeah. Okay. In the evening.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.